The Mets just made history in Chicago because not only for the first time in this team's history did three guys in the lineup hit 30 home runs or more, but Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, both are 30-30 players in 2025.
Vito, we have talked about this trio all season long. Lindor, Soto, Alonso. When Soto signed up, we said this could be the best trio in Mets history. And like you just mentioned, the first time we've ever had three guys at 30 or more home runs in a season. When the lights shine the brightest, your stars have to shine the brightest. The Mets stars have shined all season long. That trio and the guys beyond that, the bottom of the lineup, the middle of the lineup, the top of the lineup, these guys coming through in the clutch is why no one wants to see these Mets come October. But for right now, it's time for the Mets to go to Miami and take care of business.
Welcome to Meet at the Apple, presented by PC Richard & Son. I'm Vito Calise. That's Jonathan Barron. And a quick reminder at the top of the show, please, guys, like, review, subscribe, whatever you can do. Apple, Spotify, give us that 5-star review. Let us know you're listening. Help support the show. Helps us get more guests, get more access. But no more time with plugs because, John, this is the happiest podcast I feel like we've done in a while.
There ain't much time in the regular season. Speaking of time, 3 games left after Thursday night. The Mets, they go into Chicago, a team headed to the postseason. They take 2 of 3. And the Mets, you know, they knew what the situation was going into Thursday night's game. And I feel like that could be extra challenging for a team when you're playing while the teams that you are fighting with are playing. Maybe you're not as locked in and it's not in the back of your head what happened. The Reds winning on Thursday afternoon against the Pittsburgh Pirates puts the pressure on a team, perhaps, saying, hey, okay, now they won. If we don't take care of our business here tonight, then we're going to go into this final weekend all tied up in the standings. So the Mets knew exactly what needed to be done. Of course, you want to win every game, but the Reds already struck, and the Mets, they answered the call. The offense scores 8 runs without Juan Soto getting a hit, driving in a run, scoring a run. He goes 0 for 5, but it was the bottom of the lineup on Thursday night. On Tuesday, it was a team effort. Of course, you know, the bullpen came up huge. Edwin Díaz came up huge. Multiple guys had huge hits. We'll talk about all of that. But all things considered, coming off of the Nationals weekend at Citi Field where they dropped 2 out of 3, Saturday an excruciating loss, Sunday a tough one as well. You go on the road, 6 games left. This is it. It was a pretty good Tuesday through Thursday for the Mets, who got a lot of help from the Pirates. Thank you, Pittsburgh Pirates. Got some help from the Dodgers, who stuck another blow to the Arizona Diamondbacks' playoff hopes and took care of their own business by taking 2 out of 3 at Wrigley Field. 3 games under the lights at Wrigley. And now, 1 game up, 3 games to go. Second straight year we've done this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a Mets season if they're not trying to clinch on the last day, right? But, you know, John, you brought up that Reds-Pirates series and, you know, like a little behind-the-scenes thing, but at work, you know, we work at Citi Field. That's where our home base is. That's our office. We got TVs all over the place, and on any work day, MLB Network is on all the TVs throughout the day. But at this time of year, you notice a lot less people looking at their computers during a day game and a lot more people looking up at the TVs. And you would think we worked for the Pirates today because you had people cheering, you had people groaning. When that home run got robbed, the groan that led across the entire Citi Field office, it's just one of those things that's like so special about working for a team and like getting to have those moments where you're all watching together.
I actually missed that moment. I was in a meeting. So in the meeting, someone showed everyone in the room the video of Noel Marte robbing the would-be game-tying home run. But the Mets got a lot of help from the Pirates. So shout out Yins for helping out. Paul Skeens threw a gem against the Reds on
Livius King.
Night. And you know what? The Pirates, after blowing that lead, were resilient. And it just goes to show you that at this time of the year, there are no easy games. And I think we all know as Mets fans, although there isn't a soul still associated for the most part with the 07 and 08 Florida Marlins, we know the Marlins revel in the opportunity to take the Mets out with them. The Marlins were actually eliminated from postseason contention on Thursday night with their loss in Philadelphia. So the Marlins have only made the postseason 4 times in their history. Of course, 2 of them wound up with World Series banners.
Good conversion rate.
Very good conversion rate. But for all the, lack of postseason appearances, they have done a good job of especially sticking it to the Mets. So, and the Mets know this. The Mets are going into Miami. They know the 3 starting pitchers that they're going to see. They're going to see Sandy Alcantara. They're going to see Yuri Perez. They're going to see Edward Cabrera, 3 tough righties of the Marlins. The Mets are going to have to figure out a way to take care of their own business. It's nice to get help. The Reds have a challenging opponent in the Milwaukee Brewers, who are still hoping to clinch home field throughout the National League playoffs. No one lies down, but everyone knows you're better off taking care of matters in your own hands and not relying on help. So that's the situation afoot for the Mets. But I think we should give the Mets their due and really recap and dive into the things that happened in this 3-game series that helped the Mets be victorious the way they were.
Yeah, and John, real quick, before we do move on, the one last thing about all the games that have been going on the past few days and what's going across our opponents, the Diamondbacks are hanging on by a thread right now, obviously, but they're about to play the San Diego Padres, where home field advantage has not been decided between the Cubs and the Padres yet. So the Padres are going to be going full force, at least to that first game. So it's just things are looking up right now. We'll talk more about that after, but it is time to recap the series. And we're going to start off by just doing the top 5 moments of Mets Cubs presented by PC Richard & Son. And the number 5 moment, it's going to be coming from game 1. It's Edwin Díaz's 6-out save.
Yeah, I mean, this was perhaps the most dominant we've ever seen Edwin Díaz as a New York Met. It was his 5th career 6-out save. He struck out 5 of the 6 guys he faced. To record that, it was an incredible effort, and it came a point on Tuesday night where it was pretty evident that Carlos Mendoza had burned through most of the guys in his bullpen. The Mets had to win that game. They were trailing early. The bullpen did a good job keeping it where it was. The Mets came back, and Mendy had pretty much no choice but to get the last 6 outs from Edwin Díaz, and he strikes out 5 of the 6 guys. He retires to get that save. A heroic performance by Edwin Díaz. It was the first time we had seen a Met record at least 5 strikeouts in a real 2-out save, and I'll caveat that in a moment, since Seth Lugo in 2019. Before that was Pedro Feliciano way back in, I think, 2007. The caveat is Justin Hageman came into a game this year. Mets had a huge lead, pitched the last 3 innings, so he technically got a save, but not a true nursing a small lead like it was for Edwin Díaz on Tuesday night. But expect to see more of that from Edwin Díaz. Edwin Díaz is an equalizer. He's a difference maker in the back end of that bullpen. The Mets are going to leverage him in that way, just like they did in Atlanta, Game 61 in 2024. Game 3 of the wild card in 2024, Edwin Díaz came in to get multiple innings of work. Expect to see more of that. And I want to shout out Paulie. I was out on Tuesday night for most of the game. I got on a Long Island Railroad train, 1016, back to Port Washington, walking through the cars, not a seat to be had. Finally, I'm just like, all right, I'm going to ask this person if I could sit next to him. I notice young gentleman has the Mets game on his phone. So I'm like, all right, this is probably a good place to sit. I sit down, we start talking. Eventually he goes, I know you. And I was like, whatever. But Paulie and I, we sat, we watched the Met game together, saw the Alvarez home run, and Edwin Díaz complete those final 2 innings. So nice moment. Shout out, Paulie. But yeah, what a performance by Edwin Díaz, getting the job done, and then follows it up with another save on Thursday night.
And you know what? I want to add a shout out and a rest in peace and shout out to Pedro Feliciano. Pedro Feliciano threw me a baseball 2009 at BP at Yankee Stadium, threw me one of the Shea Stadium balls that they were crazily using for BP the final year at Shea balls from the year before, and he threw me one. So I'm glad you brought up Pedro Feliciano, but let's move on. Number 4 moment comes from game 3. Nolan McLean just continues to be a highlight for Mets fans to watch and strikes out 11 batters, a season high 11 for him and for Mets starting pitchers this year.
That's right. As you said, no pitcher in a Met uniform has struck out more batters than Nolan McLean did on Thursday night. The Mets improved to 6-2 in Nolan McLean starts. and he was cruising. And I know the final line, 5 earned runs allowed, 3 home runs. He entered with just 1 home run allowed. Some interesting pitch calling at times. Seiya Suzuki, a guy that really struggles against breaking pitches, much better against off-speed pitches. One of the home runs was against an off-speed pitch. But for McLean, he gave the Mets a great outing. He let the Mets jump out to a huge lead that proved to be insurmountable. And between the curveball and the sweeper, he was virtually untouchable. At one point, he had struck out 8 of 10 Cubs. He was that dominant. Nolan McLean, if the Mets are fortunate, if they can take care of their business, Nolan McLean lines up to be the game 1 starter. And for me, one of the biggest things with Nolan McLean is that he's now 50 innings past his previous career high at any level, including his college days, where he was largely used as a relief pitcher. But he is showing 0 signs of fatigue. He was hitting 97, 98. He was using his entire arsenal against lefties and against righties. Not as many ground balls as we've seen him induce in his first 7 starts. So, that's something where perhaps in his next start, maybe pitches to contact a little bit more, because the pitch count was a little bit elevated entering the 6th inning. It was clear Carlos Mendoza wanted to get him through 6 innings. Still worked out. Got to shout out the Mets bullpen as well for 3 2/3 scoreless innings. Only a couple bloop singles allowed by the bullpen as a whole. But Nolan McLean answered the call when the Mets needed a huge start in a virtually a must-win game, right? They could not lose this game, and Nolan McLean looked like an ace. And right now, that's why he's what would be, I think, the game 1 starter if the Mets do find themselves playing October baseball. So shout out Nolan McLean for a huge, gutsy, I almost said a different word, gutsy outing on Thursday night.
All right, number 3 moment. You thought he was just flashing the leather, not even flashing the skin, I guess is a better word to put it, when Brett Baty made that barehanded play at third base. But then just a few minutes later, Brett Baty hits a 3-run home run to put the Mets way ahead. And yeah, man, it's been a season where we've really enjoyed watching Brett Baty become a legitimate Major League Baseball third baseman.
Yeah, so a few things for Brett Baty. Number 1, for whatever reason, he's been a Cub killer this year. He now has 4 homers, 9 RBI in 5 games against the Cubs. You remember the Mother's Day weekend series against the Cubs at Citi Field, where Brett hit 3 home runs. That was really a big breakout series for Brett Baty, who now has 18 home runs on the season. And when you look at home runs hit as third baseman, between all of the guys that have played at third base for the Mets this season, the Mets have gotten 28 home runs from the third base position in the aggregate. That is tied for the 4th most by any team. Brett's hit a couple as a second baseman, but for the most part, they've come at third base. Him and Mark Vientos have really done a nice job sharing the platoon at third base. But for Brett on Thursday night, he hits the home run against Shota Imanaga, a left-handed pitcher, excuse me. So, for the most part, I think the Mets have really tried to go with Vientos against lefties at third base and Baty against righties at third base. But Brett Baty showed on Thursday night that the Mets could DH Vientos, still keep that bat in the lineup, and get Brett Baty in the lineup as well, because he can hold his own against left-handed pitching. An all-around great night for Brett Baty, who has really, like you said, emerged as a true everyday Major League player this season, which has been awesome to watch. Although he did get a couple NFL picks wrong, but that's okay. Anyway, you know.
All right, number 2 moment. As predicted early in this season on Meet at the Apple, we titled an episode that the Mets would have multiple guys hit 30 home runs in 2025. And Francisco Lindor, early in game 3, not only got that 30th home run, but joined the 30-30 club for the 2nd time in his Mets career. And without a back injury at the end of last year, would likely be his 3rd straight.
Yeah, so that episode that we did was when the Mets were back in Arizona. I think it was in the middle of May. I know Juan Soto had a couple of home runs that day. I think Pete Alonso might have homered, and we talked about how the Mets looked like they were going to have more than 2 guys hit 30 home runs this season for the first time ever. And so that's happened. Alonso, Soto, Lindor make the first trio of Mets with 30 homers or more in the same season. That's great. Brandon Nimmo, just 5 shy. He set a career high in home runs with his huge home run on Tuesday night. And you talked about Lindor 30-30. He joins Howard Johnson as the only Mets with multiple 30-30 seasons. Good point by you that the back injury perhaps stopped Francisco Lindor from 3 30-30 seasons. And I know this one was going around on social media on Thursday night. Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor have joined very rare company, becoming only the third pair of teammates to post a 30-30 season in the same year. The 1987 Mets had that happen, and the 1996 Colorado Rockies had that happen as well. So just a lot of history made by this Mets lineup. The stars have been the stars for the Mets, and I think that's why a lot of people look at this Mets team, if they can get into the postseason, as very dangerous, because the Mets have guys that can wreck games. And in October, I feel like there's two sides of an equation. There are guys that step up and emerge. I look at a guy like Brett Baty, who perhaps nationwide isn't thought of as that guy that can really make a huge impact in a postseason series right now. We, who watch the Mets, know that Brett Baty is that kind of a hitter. You know, the at-bat per home run rate is very good. If you extrapolate his home runs over a full season's worth of at-bats, he could easily be a 30 home run hitter in his own right. But you also rely on the big guys. You look at Game 4 last year against the Phillies. Who got it done? Francisco Lindor. You look at some other big home runs hit against the Phillies. Pete Alonso hit some big home runs for the Mets in that series. You look at how the Mets got past the Brewers. Pete Alonso hits one of the biggest home runs in Mets history with the team down to their final few outs. The Mets have that kind of star power. Star power shines through in the postseason, and this trio we talked about, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso, they've been that all season long. That's why the Mets are dangerous.
And another reason the Mets are dangerous, it's our number one moment of Mets Cubs presented by PC Richard and Son. And the number one moment is when Francisco Álvarez put the Mets ahead in Game 1 in a game where I know I, for one, was crashing out early. I was not doing well early in the game. And then all of a sudden I get more and more up on my couch. I'm leaning in. I'm pacing around my apartment. John, I did my craziest superstition thing I've done yet that I'll tell you after we finish the top 5. But Francisco Álvarez, with 2 broken hands, puts the Mets ahead in Game 1 to have their biggest comeback of the year.
Yeah, there's just not enough to say about Francisco Álvarez fighting through the injuries, returning as quickly as he did, as if the injury he sustained in Williamsport wasn't bad enough. Then he's rehabbing and gets hit on the hand and breaks a pinky on the other hand. So now he's got an injury on both hands, but he still comes back. He's still hitting opposite field home runs. He's still giving the Mets incredible value behind the dish. And in that moment on Tuesday, in the 8th inning, he comes up with, to this point, the biggest swing of his major league career. And I love the celebration, swinging 3-1, swinging 3-1, hunting a fastball and putting it out left center field, beyond the basket, into the bleachers at Wrigley Field, stopping halfway up the first baseline, celebrating with his teammates. This is still a very young player, 23 years old, already has a 25 homer season under his belt, already has multiple rounds of postseason experience. He's a guy that struggled in the postseason last year. We remember the struggles, especially the Dodgers series, where we know the story about Starling Marte talking to him. And in Game 5, he bounced back. So a guy who's been down and come back. And now this year, the ups and downs, going down to AAA, coming back, being one of the best hitting catchers in baseball for a month, then getting hurt and coming back again, playing through injury, still being able to make an impact. I'll be honest, injuries to the hands will sap power. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
This guy is a freak for what he's doing. He is an absolute freak, and he's still just 23 years old. Imagine what this kid is going to be when he's 27, 28. All these experiences that he's enduring right now. The sky is the limit for Francisco Álvarez. He is such an important part of this team right now. It feels like he's been around forever. It does. You know, we saw him for the first time right around this time in 2022, second to last series of the 2022 season. So he's been around for 3+ years, and it already feels like he's a veteran, coming up with these huge veteran moments. So excited. Another guy that can wreck a series, a game, a series for the Mets if they can get into the postseason. What a moment for Francisco Álvarez.
Amazing moment for Francisco. A huge game for the Mets. And John, now the weird thing I started doing, and I don't know where this came from. I started pacing around my apartment. I picked up a bat. I started pacing, and then I rolled
pants and a jersey on. Also,
no, I did not go full. I did not go full kit.
Okay,
but I rolled up a paper ball, and then I handed my wife the bat, and I kept saying, "If you hit the Mets, hit. If you hit the Mets, hit." And then I started pitching her rolled up paper balls as she hit. And it did lead to the Mets tying up the game, which felt really good. That was cool. And then we stopped, and then we took a break because she was like, I can't stand here and do this all night. But the weirdest thing I've ever done to like bring good luck.
Well, it sounds like Ala's going to have to keep the bat in her hands throughout the weekend and hopefully deep into October. But
I kept the paper. The rolled up ball of paper is still in my apartment.
All right, make sure that it's safe. Maybe put it in a safe spot.
And John, can I tell you one more thing?
Yes.
I have some numbers for you.
Okay.
All right. My daughter was born on May 25th.
I knew that.
Since my daughter's birthday, we celebrate her birthday every month. It's something people do in the first year. The Mets have won on every single 25th.
What's going on October 25th is my question. Is that a World Series night?
Wouldn't that be CS? No. That would be World Series because
it's a World Series night.
That would be World Series, yeah.
Night.
So
could be good. Could be something to monitor.
Let's keep it going.
My experience on Tuesday, especially, like I mentioned, I wasn't able to watch the entire game. I was keeping an eye on what was happening from a distance until the later innings. But once I finally started to catch up and really was able to, be on my phone more, my For You page had a lot of tweets from like the previous 2 hours.
Okay.
And it was pretty funny to, see the Mets up 9-7, but then kind of go 2 hours back in a time machine on X and see what many people were saying in the moments where the Mets were down, say, 6-1. So that was an interesting exercise for sure. Look, that game, especially on Tuesday, that's the kind of magical game that can spark a team. And obviously the Mets lost on Wednesday, and as they say, momentum is only as good as the next day's starting pitcher. And Jonah Tong, he got away with it a little bit in the first inning. He got squeezed on one really, really tough call on a changeup that led to him putting runners on first and second. And then Tyrone Taylor makes the great throw. So good to see Tyrone Taylor back, has a couple hits on Thursday night. And then Jonah gets through the second inning pretty quickly. And then, the location just wasn't crisp, especially with the fastball, but the stuff was playing. So I'm excited to see Jonah Tong next time he takes the ball. If the Mets use him in Miami, we will see.
Everything's on the table.
Brandon Nimmo and that 3-run home run. And Brandon Nimmo against lefties in this series. 3 hits against Imanaga on Thursday night as well. Brandon Nimmo has been, for many years now, one of the best left-handed hitters against lefty pitching. There is no platoon advantage or disadvantage for Brandon Nimmo. But that 3-run home run after Pete puts a ball off the wall, and I know many people thought initially it might get out, it might pull the Mets to within 1, and it doesn't. It turns into a long, hard, loud single, and everyone's disappointed because they're still 3 runs shy. And then Nimmo comes up with that huge home run. That is saying a massive home run. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know, but if this does amount to something, do not forget about that moment, that clutch moment from Brandon Nimmo, who, a lot of people pointed to the 9th inning on Saturday where Brandon Nimmo was up in the 9th inning, winning run on third, less than 2 outs, up 1-0 in the count, didn't get the job done. Remember, it's baseball. Tough game,
John, do you remember who else? Do you remember who else in that game?
What's that?
Do you remember who else in that game was getting a lot of criticism after being up in a big spot?
Who's that?
Francisco Álvarez.
That's right. Although we did have 2 hits in that game. But
I'm just saying, both of those guys,
didn't come through on Saturday. Came up huge on Tuesday. Nimmo comes up big on Thursday. He gets a hit. Torrens gets a hit. Baty hits the 3-run home run. That breaks the game open for the Mets. So tough sport to play. There's a reason why. Successful 3 out of 10 times. On your way to a great career. Huge bounce back efforts by multiple guys. And I forget who I saw say this. It might have been Pedro Martinez after the game on TBS on Tuesday, talking about how being on the road for this kind of situation could be beneficial for a team. And I know the Mets have played a lot better at home than on the road. But number one, for the most part, a lot of the guys that went through game 161 in Atlanta last year and went to Milwaukee, a lot of those guys are still on this team. So a lot of guys, I was thinking about this before, they literally were doing this like 365 days ago. Coming down to the final weekend, knowing the situation, if we can, win a couple games, we'll be in. These guys have been there. That matters. That experience matters for everyone in that clubhouse. And for these guys to go on the road and just tune out whatever talk is happening, it's good to get as far away from terrestrial New York radio as possible. Trust me, I listened to enough of it on Thursday morning. I know you did as well. You know what I'm talking about. Just go and play baseball. Now in Miami, there will be a lot of Mets fans down there in Florida. There always are. And I'm sure extra Mets fans are probably, if they haven't already, booking flights to Miami to hopefully see the Mets clinch a postseason spot for a second straight season. But I think there's something nice about just being away from the pressure, not worrying about, I want to, please the home crowd, and just getting it done. And we saw the Mets do that in Chicago.
Yeah. And it was Pedro who said that. And it's going to be a huge weekend, man. And I'm really interested to see. Carlos Mendoza has said a few times that they're going to be pulling out all the stops. Anything is on the table for these next 3 days. So this team is going to be doing some creative things to get to October, things that will also probably get implemented in the postseason if they do make it. And, this is what it all comes down to. And John, I feel like we said months ago, even when the team was doing its best, you still looked at the schedule and saw the Marlins at the end of the year. And there was just a feeling in the pit of your stomach of this series is going to mean something one way or another. There's no way this is going to be a throwaway series at the end of the year because it's never with the Marlins. But yeah, like what a series win for this team. There was a loud explosion sounding thing outside my apartment. I'll find out what that was after. But a huge series win for this team against a playoff team. We saw them beat the Padres a few weeks ago. We saw them beat the Tigers a few weeks ago, which, yes, they're not looking like a playoff team right now either. But the Mets are beating good teams. And fans, the Marlins right now are not a bad team. This is a competitive team. If you were watching the SNY postgame show, they said this. They showed the record since June 13th, the third best record in the National League. So this is going to be a competitive series.
Yeah, I mean, the Mets know that firsthand because the Mets hosted the Marlins the last 4 games of the month of August, and the Marlins came to Citi Field, and they took 3 out of 4. The Saturday game was close, back and forth. Marlins took a big lead. Mets came back. Marlins wound up winning, and then Sunday, Sandy Alcantara simply shut the Mets lineup down. So no one's comfortable, but I think that perhaps that is for the best. Yeah. You don't want to go in thinking this team is out of it, and this is a team that is, beneath us in the standings, and thus it's our God-given right to go into Miami and take 2 of 3 or better. The Mets know they're going to have to keep their foot on the pedal. After Wednesday's game, Francisco Lindor talked about the defensive woes and how it's not good enough. The Mets need to play clean baseball. They cannot be helping the team in the other dugout, no matter what the team in the other dugout is. And on Thursday, the Mets played well defensively. Brett Baty made that nice barehanded play, and the Mets made the plays that they needed to make. So, the Mets had a pretty strong defensive lineup out there. On Thursday, Tyrone Taylor in center field, Luis Angel Acuna at second base, Brett Baty at third base. So we'll see the choices that Carlos Mendoza and company make for each starting lineup, at least. Of course, moves are made throughout each and every game, especially as starting pitchers depart games and bullpens get involved. But also want to tip the cap to Carlos Mendoza because Tuesday's game especially, I mean, you're down 5 runs early and you got to figure out a way to just stop the bleeding and give your offense a chance to come back. And, Mendy, for the most part, pushed all the right buttons when it came to navigating major usage of the bullpen, 7+ innings of bullpen work, and deploying Edwin Díaz for that 2-out save at what I think was absolutely the right time. And then on Thursday, pushed Nolan McLean, but got him out of there after the home run. And like I mentioned at the top of the episode, the bullpen turns in 3 and 2 innings of scoreless ball, only allows two hits. Ryan Stanek comes out of the bullpen, gets the job done. We got to shout out Brooks Raley, who is now unscored upon in 25 of 28 outings since returning from Tommy John surgery on July 19th. He has been incredibly successful against left-handed batters, and he's been really good against righties as well. So he is the kind of lefty where you're not worried about the left-right matchup. You can deploy him for a full inning, feeling comfortable. And then Tyler Rogers gets the job done as well. More weak contact against Rogers. Not a big strikeout guy, but really induces a lot of ground balls, a lot of weak contact in general. And Edwin Díaz taking care of the Cubs. Dansby Swanson, who has been Edwin's second most frequent strikeout victim in his career, behind only Bryce Harper. So Carlos Mendoza did a great job. I know a lot of people saw the lineup on Thursday and had a lot of opinions, as we do. And the bottom of the lineup, I have my scorecard right here with me. Number 6 in the lineup, Luis Torrens, a single and a run scored. Number 7, Brett Baty, 2 hits, including that 3-run home run. Tyrone Taylor, a 2-run double to really blow this thing open, restore that Mets 6-run lead in the 6th inning. And then he singled in the 9th inning. And Luis Angel Acuna, who made a Managa throw 7 pitches in his first plate appearance of the night, and then drew a walk in the 9th inning as well. So everyone in the Mets lineup had a hard hit ball on Thursday night. It was an entire team effort. I think this Mets offense could have done more with some better batted ball luck. Cubs played some good outfield defense, as we saw, but Carlos Mendoza pressed all the right buttons on Thursday. And now there are 3 games left.
And, John, you texted our group chat, and, shout out to our new group chat. I've been enjoying it. I don't know if you've been enjoying it.
It's been good.
Really random. It's 4 Mets employees and then just my friend Gabe. But you brought up the Rogers brothers being in the same inning. Did you see Sarah Langs actually tweeted how many times they've pitched in the same game together?
I did not see that.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a guess.
Okay, in the same game.
In the same game.
Well, I know that Taylor was a Padre, and Tyler, of course, spent his entire career with the Giants before the trade. It wasn't a Padre for too long.
Do you want getting the exact numbers is going to be tough? Would you want?
I don't know. 7.
Do you want to just go over? Oh, no.
2.
Dude, you're never going to get this. This is crazy.
What? I don't know.
63.
All right. Well,
just an insane number.
Yeah. It's not. I mean, it's nice. Jason and Travis Kelce, I don't think played against each other that often. So it's, that's what baseball offers. And like,
one big time.
Yes, one big time. But, those guys in the same division. Tyler Rogers has been great as a Met. He really has, especially when he starts innings clean. He's been very reliable. And also, I think we should mention Ryan Helsley, who gave the Mets 2 scoreless innings on Wednesday night. Yes, it was kind of mop-up duty, but that secondary offering, the 4-seam fastball, we know 100 miles an hour, big league heat, but that slider, cutter, whatever you want to call it, was really effective on Wednesday as well. And
he looked good this weekend too.
He did look good this past weekend. It gave the Mets a couple of scoreless outings. So it's been a bit here that Helsley has really been a reliable arm for the Mets. And I would not be surprised to see them deploy him in some high leverage situations in Miami. And, quite frankly, the Mets got him for that purpose. And I know Carlos Mendoza, during the depths of Ryan Helsley's struggles and, having to answer questions about this, especially that last game in Detroit where the Mets were down a run and Helsley came in and things kind of got away. And, Carlos Mendoza throughout it said, we need to just help him get right. And I think the Mets have done a good job and deserve credit for helping him get right, putting him in good spots, putting him in the right situations, not bringing him in the middle of innings and to put out fires, but more so, putting him in games with the other team at the right point in their lineup. This is such a mental game. Being confident is so important. Trusting in your stuff is so important. And anybody in any line of work, if you're not feeling good about yourself and confident in yourself, it's probably going to impact your performance. The same goes for major league pitchers. So for him to just be feeling good about his stuff, that FU fastball up in the zone, and putting the seed of doubt in the back of opposing hitters' heads that they have to protect against the slider, that's ultra important. So it seems like Ryan Helsley is right and at the perfect time for the Mets.
And before we wrap this one up, John, we got to give one big shout out to the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, who won the Eastern League Championship. And, a lot of credit goes out to the Mets player development and all of the people who have a hand in how good this minor league system has become over the last few years. John, if you go back to 2022, 3 of 4 levels have won a championship because Port St. Lucie won back in 2022. Then you got these two winning this year. It's just been a really cool thing to see. And there's so many people to mention, but shout out to just different people like Andy Green, Andrew Christie, just all of these people on that side of the office that are just working their tails off and just, it's starting to show. And that trickle up theory that we talked about in Future of Flushing, you're already starting to see it happen with some pitchers. And it's just want to congratulate all those guys on that team.
Yeah. Had the Mets not won this game on Thursday, or had the Mets not taken 2 or 3 from the Cubs, this would be a different conversation, but we would still be talking about how bright the future is. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear about it right now. And I get that. And Vito gets that as well. We want to see the Mets in the playoffs. It's about the major league team. If we started waving a flag for the Rumble Ponies, I understand what the backlash would be. But while it's easy to get emotional about, each pitch, and this is the time of year for emotion, the Mets won 2 of the 3 full season minor league leagues, the South Atlantic League and the Eastern League.
And they went to the championships in the low A.
Correct. St. Lucie also had a good year, was a postseason team. AAA, as we know, is filled with a lot of guys who are kind of fringe major leaguers, guys that have had major league careers, and it's not as much of the future, but a lot of depth guys in the organization. The last time AA Binghamton were crowned the AA Eastern League champions was the 2014 season. A young lefty by the name of Steven Matz put them on his back and pitched them to the championship. We all know what happened the following season. The Mets have all this young pitching come together, and they wind up going to the World Series at the major league level. If you look at the Rumble Ponies, and I mentioned this on the last episode, and especially in the finals against Erie, who, by the way, have 2 of the top prospects in baseball in Kevin McGonigal and Max Clark, and they've won the previous 2 seasons. They beat Binghamton in the championship round in 2023. They've been a feeder for the Tigers, who were a playoff team last year, and they won on Thursday, putting themselves in a good spot to get back to the postseason. But you look at the Ponies and who really led the charge in this series. Jacob Reimer is a name to know. He had a huge season, promoted, didn't skip a beat. Nick Morabito, a name to know. Jack Wenninger, who pitched the final game of the series for Binghamton, had 10 strikeouts through 4 innings, finished with 11 strikeouts through 5, 21 whiffs, a guy that throws 5 pitches, huge presence on the mound, nasty splitter. I was watching this game, especially during Wenninger's portion before the Met game started. Erie could not lay off of the splitter. By the way, Erie has a really good player named Carlos Mendoza. Funny little sidebar. But between Wenninger and RJ Gordon and Zach Thornton, who didn't even pitch in this series, who's been hurt, and Will Watson, who was one of the breakout pitchers in the Mets system this year, and Jonathan Santucci, the Mets are loaded up and down the system. And the winning in the minor leagues does make a difference. And for the Mets to have 2 of these 3 full season titles under their belts in 2025 is a huge accomplishment. And all of this talent is coming up to the major league soon, and it's going to be a sustained winner. So while I know we're all focused on the Mets, and I get it, we should be very excited about what happened for the Mets in 2025. Many young players having breakout seasons, emerging as true potential difference makers in the future. This is all huge going into the offseason. So good on you for bringing that up.
All right, guys. Well, we got a big weekend of baseball ahead of us. We'll be back here Monday morning talking about what went down, but it's hold on to your butts weekend. It's hold on to your butts weekend in Miami. I can't wait. This is what it's all about. Like I said this on the last episode, and I think some people got mad at me and thought I was trying to make an excuse, but I still mean it. Like, as a fan of this team who, like, for so many years, the last weekend of the year, you're just going to the game for fun. To be looking forward to baseball and baseball that matters, I don't even want to talk about how we got here. All I want to focus on is the other side of it. And this team has a chance to punch its ticket to October, and that's all that matters right now. So let's go Mets, and it's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on what you just said, you know, how many times have the Mets made the postseason in consecutive years in team history? The answer is 2. So, you know, all we want at this point is to get into the postseason. We've seen in the new format, all you got to do is get in. Road teams have had a lot of success in the wild card round. We saw the Texas Rangers blow a division a couple years ago, just get into the playoffs after a disastrous September. And then remember that they have a guy like Bambi Adolis Garcia, who I talk about series records, was a series record against the Astros in that 7-game series. We've seen this. This happens. We saw the Diamondbacks go on this crazy run a couple of years ago. This happens. And if anything,
Juan Soto.
we just saw last year 2 dominant division winners go to the World Series. So that hasn't been the rule. That's been the exception. If anything, it tells us that we're probably due for another wacky postseason where a team that up and down and looking like they're just spiraling out of control, just it clicks. And we've talked about the stars, Soto, under the bright lights of October, how incredible he's been in his big league career. And teams that have had issues pitching-wise in the regular season, you consolidate this time of year. You don't give everyone a turn in the rotation just because it's their time to pitch every 5 days. You go with the guys who are carrying the weight, carrying the freight. And that's what this time of the year is all about. So yes, we will be reconvening on Sunday. And we hope it is a happy recap, to quote the great Ralph Kiner. But what a year it's been, regardless of how this weekend goes in Miami. What a year.
And we'll see you guys back here on this podcast. Remember, like, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Vito F. Calise. John is at JMB9191. And before we get out of here, we got to talk about the device that if you're not in Miami, you'll be watching this series on.
Whatever the device is, I know where you can get it from. If you want another one, I know where you can get it from, and that is PC Richard & Son, our friends, the official sponsor of Meet at the Apple. And look, they've been taking care of us all year. They will take care of you as well. The friendliest, the most knowledgeable sales staff. Whatever it is you're looking for, if you're feeling up, if you're feeling down and you want to go buy something to make yourself feel better, if you want to celebrate and buy something to keep the good feelings rolling, the endorphins, you go to PC Richard & Son. They've got everything you need and more: laptops, gaming devices, televisions, appliances, mattresses, and so much more. And they've been doing it longer than anybody in the business since 1909. The first World Series ever played, I think, was 1903. So, like, you know, there were only a 6-year gap between the first ever World Series and PC Richard & Son. Think of that. But PC Richard & Son, that's the place to go. They'll take care of you. Now it's time for the Mets to take care of their business in Miami.
So we'll see you guys next time at the Apple.